I'd like you to close your eyes. Can you imagine that when you open them again, that everything around you is unfamiliar and new? Ponder that for a moment. Now you can open them. What an extraordinary world we live in. But how well do we really know it? I'm an artist working in sound and imagery. That's me on the right. I'm on a mission to experience the world around me very differently. What you've just seen are excerpts from that over the last 9 years, from my quest. As a composer and musician, I'm aware that we don't tend to analyze music when we listen to it, particularly instrumental music. We allow it to just flow into us. But what about visual information? That seems to be different. My story starts here in Iceland in 1999. I was on holiday, but I was also filming and collecting sounds. I'm always up to something. Like recording geothermal crackling under the surface of the earth. I loved the landscape of Iceland, the forms, the patterns, and the quality of light, and the volatility. I wondered why some environments affected me more than others, and why I liked some more than others. What was it about them? How was I experiencing them differently? Flying out of Iceland, the extraordinary landscape from the air really captivated me, and it lit a spark for something. Here's me with my older brother, Johnny. He was born very premature, brain damaged at birth, and has cerebral palsy. His language is limited, but his experience of the world is very visual, with great attention to what I might see as minor details. What could I learn from him? I became a father to Frederica in the year 2000. My wonderful little teacher showed me a lot about how a pre-verbal child was experiencing the world around her. And I wondered how the development of language might affect that. Do we lose something when we start to speak and name things? Could we experience with no analysis? How would that be? Do we know what is real or imagined? Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but what does that mean if we don't actually know what we're looking at? These images are minute, but they could be really huge. Looking at the world as a child was a beautifully simple idea, but I had no idea how to do it. Iceland was calling me. I had a dream or an obsession to film from the sky. Madness or inspiration, I don't really know, but I had no money to do it. So I remortgaged my house and hired a helicopter and a gyro-stabilized camera. Call me an obsessive. I didn't think I'd get a second chance at this, so I accessed the best technology I could find to try out an idea, to experience the world around me differently. Iceland's an amazing country, and I had a wonderful experience there. I tried to look through the lens with curiosity and openness, without analyzing. Remember when you opened your eyes at the beginning of this? Did you have a slightly different perspective? Here's me in the middle of the world's third largest glacier. This had nothing to do with the film shoot. I just wanted to be left there for a little while. Everywhere I looked, miles around, in every direction, it was white. Thankfully, they picked me up again. On this film shoot, I really wanted to slow down my world as well, and I worked for the first time with Vision Research's phantom slow motion cameras. Slow motion gives us the opportunity to see subtle changes that happen in constantly changing environments. In this language-dominated world, I was trying to make a film that shared its secrets without words. I called it "The Air Holds Still on My Breath." It was about experiencing beauty through abstraction and ambiguity, with no context or analysis, like a piece of music. Novelty can give a massive release of the neurotransmitter dopamine into the reward systems in the brain. Could looking anew at the world make me feel happier? I'd started something I couldn't stop. I took the finished film to the Cannes Film Festival to see what might happen. There I met David Lynch's producer, who encouraged me to turn it into a feature film. That's the kind of guy I can't ignore. This was getting bigger. I needed some help. I was now in the world of non-verbal filmmaking, so I sought out a real master and a hero of mine called Godfrey Reggio. He made the Qatsi trilogy, starting with Koyaanisqatsi in 1982. The music was by Philip Glass, and it had the support of Francis Ford Coppola. This was a film without words, leaving the meaning up to the viewers. Godfrey said, "It's not for the lack of love of language that these films have no words. It, language, no longer describes the world in which we live." Language was limiting. Could I move beyond it? I teamed up with the producer, Rob Alexander from Perfect Motion, and things then really got organized. The project became Breath, and I got some funding. Finally, we could do more aspects of the project. We put together the creative team and an academic team that was drawn from 6 UK universities, including Oxford and Cambridge. We were mapping the human life experience through the metaphor of landscape. I was restless, though. I wanted to head north again and shoot something really tricky. I was on a shoestring budget, but somehow I managed to convince one of the world's best camera manufacturers to support me, Arri. I ended up in the Arctic Circle with one of the best low-light cameras in the world. I love having access to this kind of gear, but I had no idea how to use this camera. I was on my own in almost constant darkness at -20. I figured it out eventually. I was there to film the Aurora Borealis, but would it come out? Could I capture it? The stakes were high. This was sink or swim. Oh, I had 6 days of that. And then thankfully, it happened. It came out, and it was amazing. Here's me, shot on a 360-degree camera, in the middle of the night, deep snow, filming these extraordinary displays. Or the merry dancers, as my Orcadian mother calls it. I was absolutely thrilled to be out there filming this. One of the highlights of my life. Back home, I started to film other landscapes, the human body. Could I fly over the human body like I'd done with the helicopter over Iceland? For that, I needed the right technology. And this large green beast here is called a Miro. It's a motion control system. And it's made by a company called Mark Roberts Motion Control. And they won an Oscar for it. And that's an ultra close-up lens called a borescope. For this kind of project, I needed the right kind of people as well. The kind of person who'd been filming insects with David Attenborough for decades. Rob Hollingworth was my guy. He was on the camera, and he joined a great team on Breath of people helping me realize this rather mad vision of mine. I wondered how close I could get before it was unmanageable. When you're working in extreme close-up, shots can be completely ruined by any minor movements in the equipment, vibrations, or breathing, but not just breathing, lymphatic twitches in the body, things I couldn't even see with the naked eye. Even though I had the best equipment and the best people, the first day was a total disaster. Well, it was to me. I was demoralized. I only had a few shots, But I was seeing new and amazing landscapes right there in front of me. We had another go with some new technology and a new approach. Pablo Picasso had said it took him a lifetime to learn to paint like a child. I really understood that now. We filmed the very young, mapping the human journey to old age. Maybe our bodies weren't so familiar after all. I was entranced by the ambiguity of body terrains. And I started seeing parallels to what I'd shot in Iceland. Lots of intense observation and comparison. So here's a close-up of my eye. Iceland and Norway were inspirational, but what about the landscapes nearer my home? I was fascinated by what's all around me, like a toddler. Crawling around in the undergrowth, I could find very different worlds, like the water droplets on this leaf. I love getting lost in these places. Time disappears. I wondered how much of the world around me I was really aware of. I was fascinated by this symbiotic relationship between life forms. And I started cultivating mold on fruit and veg in my airing cupboard. For some reason, my family had a problem with this. I could see a whole new world on a decaying orange, landscape of a distant planet, perhaps. An abundance of life. Could we live in balance like this with nature? Could we develop a greater awareness of the interconnectedness between the diverse environments we inhabit? Our survival relies on that. Technology had transformed since my first slow-motion exploits. Phantom cameras could now slow down motion by 40,000 times. An eye blink would take over 3 minutes at this speed. I worked with the world's top slow-motion camera and did some experiments. And I blew things up, slowed them down, and saw what I didn't normally see. This is butane gas and water. This was about bypassing the analytical brain and encouraging a sense of mystery and unknowing to challenge how we see our world. Scale can be very misleading, but how misleading? I set up a chemistry lab at home and started filming in Petri dishes to see the behavioral and visual similarities between very different environments on very different scales. Macro within the micro. Distant planets again. I had a burning desire to return to Iceland. With Phantom's top camera, I needed another bite at this. There was little money left in the budget, but my crazy idea somehow captured the imagination of another camera manufacturer, Vision Research, who made the Phantom, and it happened. Here I was again, working with a camera worth well over £100,000, but I didn't really know how to use it. I was reading the manual on the plane on the way out. I had to learn fast. I was filming the majesty of waterfalls and the twisting forms of geothermal mud and explosive geysers. So where do I go next? Well, my exploration always continues. I'm always shooting something new and learning. I hope to draw all the strands of the project together into a finished film and interactive art installation. To bring the power of a non-verbal journey to a curious audience like this one. Can we listen to the earth? It gives us so much. It's not a resource, but the source of life. Can we live in harmony with the spaces we inhabit and look with more curiosity at this awe-inspiring world? Or as William Blake said, to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower. Thank you.